Happy Stance time zone. I'm Richard of Richard and Karl Present Deep Space and Dragons.
And I am Karl, and I demand that Richard tell me about his fluffy cheesecake.
No.
What? Why?
Well, that felt like a very just fun response. Like, you clearly had a whole bit. Pre-stream, you're like, I have a whole bit prepared, and this bit is going to revolutionize the world. But instead, I must talk about Uncle Tetsu's Japanese-style cheesecakes, apparently.
Well, no, see, last week, post-stream, you and I were chatting, and then you said you had to go eat a fluffy cheesecake, and then you said that I had to demand to hear about it the next stream, so here I am, demanding.
See, that's hilarious, because I had completely forgotten I set up this bit. Like, completely forgotten. So, for context, you know how I like to be like, what's new with me, and I'm like, oh, nothing. I have read so many things this week, because I'm in a writing and publishing program, and I volunteer for Slush Pile reading, and I just do a lot of reading, and I've absorbed all of the information and just kind of pushed fluffy cheesecakes out of my brain. But yes, so several locations in the GTA, or the 6 apparently, which is what the area is called, and this is complete news to me, and I think people are just trying to gaslight me. But, anywho, I discovered a place called Uncle Tetsu's Japanese-style cheesecakes, and they're like a cheesecake, but instead of like a brick of like solidified dairy like a North American cheesecake, they're like take a regular cake and then make it somehow half cheesecake. So like it's like fluffy and cake-like, but rich like a cheesecake. And I assume that they're literally made out of like angel wings or something, and they're really good. But they're hard to describe, because those two things I just said are incongruent, right? Like a creamy baked good doesn't really make sense. But they're quite delicious.
That was why I was curious, because it's like fluffy cheesecake. Like how can you have a fluffy cheesecake? Like
I honestly, the only way I can explain this is when I next encounter you in real life, I'll try and remember to have a cheesecake waiting.
Well, maybe I'll demand that.
Exactly. You see, that was the set. Like, now my bit's coming back to me that I want to do is you could demand a cheesecake. It'll be like, you'll find out what, like, you'll have to fly out here to get here. And then, like, that would be, like, the explanation for Karl Fest is you demanding cheesecake. That was the bit I was trying to set up. But I had forgotten because it's not that I have a bad memory. It's that I have bad RAM. Like, my hard drive space is amazing once it loads what's there.
Right.
But
that's pretty funny.
With that segue, what's new in the Karlverse? Ooh, you built a sandblaster?
No,
that might be the most damage I've ever done to you.
I gave up on the sandblaster basically, just because like I have to buy a new like case, and there's a bunch of stuff that I have to buy for that. And right now, I'm busy, planning for, well, I would call it Vladfest, but
no, it's always going to be Karlfest. See, the thing is, you're actually the main character, right? Like, that's just objectively true. We all know this. That's why my name goes first. It's like, you watch Scooby-Doo, and you're like, who's the main character of Scooby-Doo? And it's Shaggy. We all know it's actually Shaggy. It's always actually been Shaggy's the main character of Scooby-Doo. Because Scooby-Doo reacts, and Shaggy proacts, and Fred is a monster. He's just like, yeah, me and Daphne are going to go check the rooms upstairs for the monsters. And while we're checking the bedrooms, you go try not to get eaten.
Yeah, I mean, how is it that Scooby and Shaggy are always the ones who run into the monsters? Like, I think that Frank and Daphne know where the monsters are, and they just send Scooby and Shaggy there.
Well, theory A is exactly that. And theory B is that Shaggy is legitimately cursed, and everyone's pieced this together. And it's just like, yeah, his dark energy maybe his monsters are drawn to negativity. So they keep him on the team just to be a negative energy source to draw on hollows. Or corrupt businessmen. Or, because it's usually capitalism's the villain, and Freddy's some rich trust fund kid, I bet you this is all like part of a three-phase thing. Where like he's in cahoots with like the evil carnival runner to then get the evil car runner arrested, so he could take a payoff to like It's like the Trump scandal, right? If you're in jail, you can't go to jail for your other crimes, so just commit so many crimes that you're always in a rotation of trials and never actually in jail.
Never actually in jail.
Or something. I don't know. This is not your political show. Disclaimer, if you're watching Deep Space and Dragons to hear about American politics, why not just turn on any TV channel anywhere on Earth?
Yeah. Especially in Canada because, well, we're not allowed to post Canadian news.
But I never actually did get what's new to Karl. I just kind of am like a distraction. Bucket sand.
Well, see, the problem is that this week was boring.
What?
Yeah. There was nothing going on this week.
No crimes in front of you? No one stole any ambulances?
No, well, I mean, the most interesting thing that happened, which didn't even happen to me, and okay, it's tragic.
Oh.
But my boss, he owns a house that he rents out, so that he has a garage to store all of his cars in.
Oh, this isn't the parking lot situation, is it?
No. He's rented out this house to this guy for like 13 years or something. This guy's lived there for a long time, and there was a murder in that neighborhood, and Jeff comes into me and he's like, "Oh, that murder that happened in that neighborhood? It was my tenant's kid that got murdered."
Oh. I came into this room with the wrong energy today.
Well, so then I had to write a letter that said that he couldn't pay for his rent because, I don't know, I guess you can get murder assistance?
You should be able to get murder assistance.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly how that all works, but I had to write this letter that said this guy was behind on rent, and this was the amount and when it was due. But, generally just not very interesting.
I mean, I set myself up for that, right? I'm like, wacky Karl and wacky Saskatchewan gonna talk wacky crime. So here I am notifying next to kin. Oh. Actually, that's more interesting and more sad. You were notifying banks about deaths. It's like when I worked at Redacted Theaters and the incident report webpage thing, because it was like a digital incident report filer, had a checkbox for deceased.
Wow.
And I think the saddest thing in the world that could ever happen to a human being is if you die, and the response is someone clicks a checkbox, switching you from alive to dead in the system.
Yeah, that would be pretty sad.
Because it's like, you think it would warrant like a phone call or something. At the very least, like a police officer. Like, how many deaths happened at Redacted Theaters that needed a button for it?
Well, I mean, given their safety record, probably a few.
Like, I'm just saying, imagine installing in all the POSs at your Redacted Pizzeria a deceased button because this has happened enough that you need to have a quicker procedure for it.
Well, I mean, it hasn't happened enough, but there was a delivery driver that died.
I feel like people listen to us for like happy fun times escapism. Silly Karl and Silly Richard complaining about some dumb cartoon being more dumb than the other dumb cartoon by like 3%. And we're like, wow, yeah, we live in a corporate hellscape, don't we? They're like, stop being real, please.
The delivery driver didn't die on the job. He just happened to die while being employed.
Fair.
I mean, I have no idea. I don't think anybody's ever died on the job.
Legitimate question. So your drivers work on commission.
Mm-hmm.
So if they die on commission, would you even need to click the button?
They are technically third-party contractors, so, I mean, we don't really collect any information about them. They're just like, yeah, you have a car, you have a license, can you work these hours? You're hired.
If elected prime minister, I would ban Uber and Meta in Canada.
Uber and Meta. Ooh.
Uber, Meta, and Airbnb would all be banned.
What do you got against Airbnb?
So listen, to rent out an apartment... So first off, we have a housing crisis. Just straight up. Okay. This is just a fact.
Right.
So if you rent out your house to a human being as a tenant, you have to have it inspected to make sure said human can live there.
Right.
In the Airbnb, you somehow don't. So we live in a country without enough houses, with people leaving their houses to sit empty, so they could get one-time unregistered payouts for a foreign company to take 20%, rather than actually contributing to fixing our housing crisis. Airbnb is just bad. Because that means
I hadn't thought about that.
You right now could just rent out your room to a stranger from Wisconsin instead of someone who needs a home.
Yeah, I mean that's.
And also,
that's
it could
true.
just be a pit full of spikes.
Or it could be a pit full of webcams.
Yeah, so, like, you see how it's like how... And Uber makes me... Uber and Lyft and things make me wonder that too, where it's like, aren't you the same company, just unregulated? Like, isn't Uber just a taxi that we haven't tested to make sure is safe? So I don't actually know how these companies exist, to be perfectly honest. Like, could you imagine if your business was you bought a van and just sold pizza out of that van? You would need, like, a license, right? So why would you making an app that lets people order pizza to their house and you just cook it outside their house in a van be more legal because there's an app involved? That is my rant.
And they pay in advance.
And also, the reason I would just ban Meta is the studies show Meta is just worse for you than cigarettes. And, yeah, it just causes anxiety, mental health, suicide, depression, lost sleep, circadian rhythm damage, car accidents, election fraud, riots. And no one's quite given me an argument as to why we should keep redacted social media companies if they literally just like, hey, legally, we passed a bill, you should pay our journalists. And they're like, fine, we just won't put news from your country out. And we're like, okay, we didn't just be like, cool, get out of our country? We're a country. We're not weaker than Meta, I think. I don't know. We are Canada.
Our GDP probably is lower than Meta.
But we have to have more soldiers, right? And if we don't, we need to fix this planet ASAP. Because I know we don't have more soldiers than Pepsi, but I'm not dumb enough to make that fight.
Speaking of, I lost my train. Well, I know my train of thought. I was going to segue better, but.
Well, anytime the segue is speaking of Pepsi, and then what was it going to be like? Child labor camps? Are we turning into Last Week Tonight with John Oliver? Oh Lord.
No. I was gonna segue into AI. Specifically, I'm a little bit curious. When was your short story assignment due that I gave you ideas for?
So my short story assignment is due. I have 4 large projects due exactly on my birthday.
Oh.
I have 4 classes with 4 assignments, each worth a quarter of my grade, due on my birthday somehow.
And that's the day that you're taking off for Vladfest?
Correct. I also have, like,
Vladfest now.
2 people reached out to me for job interviews on that exact day as well, even though I don't do anything 365 other days of the year. It is a Wednesday. It is, you have no idea how, like, my, like, gut instinct was like, how about Wednesday at noon? And I'm like, no! Pick any time else.
But so Wednesday you have a bunch of assignments due, and one of them is the short stories worth 25% of your grade?
It's attached to something worth 25%. So, this particular class is making an imprint, which is like a type of publishing house, effectively. And the first assignment is everyone has to pitch a story to make the slush pile. So that way, you then bid on the stories in the second half for which one goes to your magazine. So the rest of the class gets to bid on who wants my story for their magazine and why it would fit.
Yeah, okay.
But I also have to do another little thing for that class worth money. So that was the easiest thing I had to do, / the most fun. Not counting the classes like make a resume and a cover letter, and I'm like, open folder labeled job hunting, open resume, submit. That one was funny, though, because I had to run it through an AI detector to find certain keywords. Because what it does is a lot of job postings will scan resumes for keywords, so they have detectors that'll make sure you have the right keywords for that job posting, so you get flagged as an appropriate contender. We live in the worst dystopia. When both people set up computers to scan to see if the job post and resume match, just have a phone call, guys. Like... It's like, oh, he said Microsoft Office, not Microsoft Suite, auto rejection. And I'm like, just talk to him. And if he's like, I eat puppies, don't hire him. God, what are you... Ugh. It's like people come up with new ways to cheat that are harder than actually doing the thing.
But okay, so the resume was your easiest one. But so you're submitting your story to be bid on by your co-students.
Yeah.
To be put into their hypothetical magazine.
That is correct.
And then the actual portion of the assignment is making the magazine?
So the first one's making like a mission statement for a magazine, but we had to have these stories up early so people could read them.
Ah, okay.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. Because not everyone reads as fast as you do.
Oh man, it's a gift right now. Like, some of the sheer terror some of my classmates are getting, where they're like, now read 30 stories in 3 books, and then 4 books, and then 3 stories from this magazine, and 5 stories from this magazine, and they're all drowning, as my redacted professor's like, in my program I had to read more than you guys, so I don't feel bad for you. Do. As he should not feel bad.
Right.
It's that irony where it's like, oh, I have to do so much reading in this writing and publishing program, and I'm like, yes?
Yeah, kind of what you signed up for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, but I feel like you're going somewhere with this before I'm like, explanatory.
Well, I mean, I was interested to see whether or not your assignment had been graded, because I did read it and give you some feedback.
Yes, which I had time to incorporate it.
And secondly, I gave you like 5 ideas, and obviously the AI can't. Well, maybe AI captain of the ship.
No, that's a person.
Ideal. Definitely a person who's just lived so long they've forgotten.
I'm going to just kind of like co-op the rest of this episode to talk about this because I'm excited about it. And then I will answer your questions and you can keep asking questions. So the TLDR is, after writing that short story, I got inspired for my like masterwork graduation novel-sized project.
Okay.
So I'm not going to use that character, but I really liked the idea of the massive colony ship that moves at literal light speed, making a tens of thousands of years, if not longer, trip. So my masterwork novel is I'm doing a short story collection that goes through the journey of the 21 Arcana cards as a series of short stories of people who are in deep sleep remote piloting robots on this ship.
Huh.
So there's 4 generations of robots. There's Generation 1, people who had their brains put in a robot buddy to oversee it. Generation 2, people who photocopied people's brains and put them in robots, but a few of them went psycho and killed the originals.
Okay.
Generation 3, where they were made to be remote Wi-Fi piloted, but sometimes they would just like break down and stop at inopportune moments. Which resulted in one person ending up in 2 robots that weren't aware that they were robots, that fell in love and then realized they fell in love with themselves and helped them come over their trauma.
Okay.
And the 4th generation robot, where they took the clone brain one and the Wi-Fi one, so that way like both brains are constantly being backed up, so if there's a disconnect, after it reconnects, both things just upgrade. And those are the currently used ones.
Ah, yeah, okay.
So it's kind of like the 50 story, like, what was it, like 20 stories of Springfield, but as a call. Actually, I described it earlier to my professor as Canterbury Tales in Space.
Okay.
And I really like the colony ship people dreaming robot body idea. A, because if I want to make a TTRPG later, it lets me use the world trigger mechanics of blowing off someone's arm and be like, oh wait, I was a robot all along. But I kind of love the joke that if you have a ship that goes at exactly light speed, light years become both a measurement of time and distance, and it's funny to me.
That actually is pretty funny.
I like how my novel sci-fi concept is we never did figure out faster than light travel, but we got light travel, so our solution is freeze drying.
Well, so I mean,
because like here's a question to you if you're a character in this book. So you're in this ship heading towards a habitable planet that's like 20,000 light years away, or like, let's go 2,000 light years away. But while you're on the journey, you're functionally immortal. Do you ever actually want to arrive? Because you have a robot body, you can just keep printing new ones as your regular one floats there in the brine dreaming. Do you actually want to get where you're going?
Well, okay, so the robot bodies are connected via Wi-Fi to the human bodies.
Yeah,
right?
This is the one that's like a closed loop. So anything the robot goes gets backed up into the human and then back up into the robot. It's the 4th generation. We figured it out at this point.
Right.
And you can just 3D print a new body whenever you feel like it, really.
Yeah, see, that's a tough one, because I don't know that I would want to be stuck on a spaceship for the rest of eternity. But I don't know that I'd want to give up the closed-loop robot body system either.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, once you get on the planet, then eventually you have to, like, start unpacking. See, one of the key arguments is that, while everything's preserved, mankind, your population can't grow because you've mathed out your fixed system. So you really get, like, the same group of people forever. And even though you could effectively simulate anything and build anything, and have, like, a decent enough space on the ship to, like, build a small bookstore, melt it down, build a cafe, melt it down, make a pizzeria, melt it down. Eventually, you will, theoretically, have had every conversation and hung out with every person. But also, you have an option to go back to sleep.
The robot body does?
You could turn the robot body off and put the human that's hooked up to you back to sleep. By effectively pushing the suicide button, because you get put back to sleep until someone else externally wakes you up again, which you have no power over, because you can't wake yourself up. Which is what the chapter about the Death Tarot card's about, is someone who's really bored, but doesn't trust anyone to actually wake them back up.
Well, I am extremely amused that my what was it? It's
prompt.
Two sentence prompt inspired such a grand idea.
Oh yeah, so like I've been like just diving down that rabbit hole where the short story for the one class won't make it into my masterwork, but it was a way for me to play around with the idea. I might keep the captain because he amuses me. I just love the idea where it's like, we need a few people to be awake for 20,000 years of misery and boredom. Do I get my books? Yes? Sign me up.
Well, the one line in your short story that stood out to me was the if I didn't know to look for a memory, why would I go look for it?
Right? Because
so like he doesn't even know if his memories are up there. He just because he's never bothered to look because he doesn't know to look for them.
I also enjoy the idea that's like a super meta joke that I ended it ambiguous if Karl survives at the end until anyone remembers what the Karl joke is.
As soon as I saw the name Karl in the short story, it's like, oh man.
I love the idea that in the context of the story, it's ambiguous and you never know if he woke up, if he was in hell, if he died. But from the meta note, he died, obviously. I'm a consistent troll. Like, the thing is, it's going to be like 20 years from now, I'm going to write like my Emmy Award-winning movie, best piece of work, completely seriously. It's going to be like a 10-part movie series. And the main character is going to be named Karl, and you're going to know.
I'm gonna know.
It's gonna be like an Adventure Time thing where it's like everyone's rooting for this character for 10 books, and you're like, I know he's not making it through to the end.
All right. Well, so more so where I was going with this question is, firstly, obviously you really liked my second story idea.
Yeah.
But my first story idea, the man who has his soul put into a toy that ends up being stolen and pawned to a small child.
Kind of amusing that in a weird way.
Yeah.
So I'm literally calling the robot bodies puppets, right? And the humans dreamers. And you're putting your mind in these objects. So, story 2, The Lovers, kind of involves someone buying a robot with someone's consciousness in it.
Yeah, okay.
So you see where that's going.
So I guess in the media that you've consumed, would you say that is a fairly unique idea, or fairly generic, or somewhere in the middle?
So I'm going to pull up your list of prompts because this is a fun episode topic. What device? Where did you send me these prompts? Did you text them? Did you?
A text.
Cool. Okay. So, for the idea of a soul being put in a toy, and then the child wants revenge, and like the
toy wants revenge, but it puts the child in danger, and then he begins to contemplate whether or not he wants justice, revenge, or if he even seeks happiness.
So it's kind of a subversion, because I've definitely seen the evil doll trope a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, weirdly enough, I've also seen the wants revenge, but, like, I don't want to say Iron Giant, because it didn't quite have that energy.
Mm.
But, like, if we were to be really abstract, Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon becoming friends with Hiccup and then not murdering the Vikings, like, the emotional themes are through, but the idea is pretty unique. The closest I've gotten is, like, a few, like, almost like there's an episode of Futurama where he's trying to spook Fry to death and then realizes he can't go through with it because it's his best friend, and then they become Amish together.
Okay.
And at one point he literally possesses a toy.
Okay.
So the energy's there. It's unique enough that, like, so I was entertaining the ideas, right? But when I got to number 2, I'm like, oh, that's good.
Well, so number 2, I like it as well, and I've talked to you before. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this podcast, but I have this idea that someone who's immortal, you have a finite amount of space in your brain for memory, and so eventually you would forget that you had ever been born, to the point where you might not be sure that you ever were born,
and
you'll live entire lifetimes and forget about them.
And that idea definitely worked its way into the idea, because, like, I'm like, all right, me and Carl had this conversation, here's the pitch. Ooh, I'm going to do both of them. I'm going to put pineapple and banana peppers on this pizza. Heck yeah. So the thing is, once I got to idea 2, I'm not going to say I stopped reading the ideas, but I'm like, okay, that's a good one. But then we get to idea 3. Cat suddenly gained the ability to fly. Military hires a quirky cat whisperer to investigate and help mediate the chaos. That is a great kid's book or cartoon, like... I love that.
Well, see, the first 2, the first one definitely is straight up about souls in inanimate objects. The second one is kind of toes that line, and then I was like, I'm seeing a theme here. I should try to aim for the fences and go for something else.
So you're like, you would just hit a home run out on that one. I'm like, yeah, no, if I was trying to write a kid's book or a 7-minute film, like, I had to write a 7-minute screenplay a while back as a class.
Mm-hmm.
That is a great spot for that.
Yeah, okay.
Especially, like, the visual of the military and just Miko grooming himself at this table, and they're like, we need your help. Because in my brain, the cat whisperer was also a cat.
Yeah,
just in, like, a military hat. So, like, if we were drawing a gag manga together, idea 3... would go right there with we'd have psychic investigator, then we'd have military cat.
Yeah, okay, that would be pretty great.
And idea 4 got poisoned by me recently going through Bleach because they announced that they're doing the Hell Arc da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, idea 4 is what would have happened if Ichigo's dad, who knew all of the plot, didn't wait 6 months to talk to Ichigo about it. Because the joke is, like, one of my favorite points in Bleach is actually, and I'd never seen another show do this, is you always have, like, the teenage superpower, and then the parents don't really, like, get involved or aren't drawn. Ichigo's dad is by far the best character in Bleach, because he gets called out as, like, you know your son's a Soul Reaper, right? He's like, yeah, like, father like son, are you going to tell him or help him? Why would he do that? He's 16, he's got to figure this shit out on his own. He needs to fight demons on his own. Yeah, he's got this. I believe in my kids. I'm like, that character is by far the best character in the show. Because, like, wait, he could have just went and rescued Ruki and probably succeeded. But then his son wouldn't have learned anything.
So, to read the prompt, parents are confused when their adopted child awakens to family bloodline sorcery. I mean, it does kind of have that Bleach-esque kind of, like,
well, that's where my brain took
bloodline and whatnot.
So my brain went a couple directions with it because I'm a weeb. The second one I went was, like, reverse My Hero Academia, where it's like, my kid has a power. But, like, weirdly enough, the my kid has a power is less interesting. Normal parents' kid has a superpower is actually more played out than superpowered kid doesn't have a power. or kid awakens power and wasn't supposed to. I don't know. Like,
well, I see that's kind of the thing is kid awakens power wasn't supposed to, and then the parents are like, wait, like how is this possible? We accidentally adopted someone that was actually related to us?
oh, your prompt didn't explain the hook. I didn't catch that at all. So I got parents confused when their kid awakens the family bloodline. I missed the adopted part. I don't know how I didn't register. Oh, I get it now.
Yeah, okay.
Why is this random child we adopted by coincidence have the same superpower as Nan Nan? I see it. I see why that's funny, but also, like, it's weird. Like, would I do the twist that they just loved him so much that he got their superpowers? Like, so...
I don't know if that's a twist or not.
So let's look at a weird example. I'm going a weird direction with this. So a lot of shows I like in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, especially cartoons and things, have become more LGBTQ plus ultra. And something like, let's go, The Dragon Prince did this a little bit, but like a lot of fan art will have like a same-sex pairing and draw their kid with a combination of the two kids' traits.
Okay.
And if a show does that and it's a kid's show, you don't really think about it. It's like, oh yeah, sure, why not? Because, like, I think about the Fire Emblem game where you paired off the parents to make kids. And if you paired off two characters of the same gender and a kid had the hair and eyes of the two parents, you wouldn't actually think too much about it, weirdly. I find a lot of times if you're, like, soft serving it, people aren't going to get super outraged. They're just going to be like, huh, and not really think it too much. So, like... If you had a firebender and a waterbender, and the kid was a steambender, and you're like, the kid was adopted. Part of me is like, okay, but like, did they just love them so much they got the characteristics? Do I go wholesome for this? So that idea didn't like click the first time I read it, which might be part of the problem.
Well, I mean, I guess that's fair. That one was a fairly short prompt. Like, it's a single sentence as opposed to the two that the other ones get. I
think if you broke it into two sentences, it would have got me better if you're like, parents are confused when their child awakens to bloodline sorcery because they adopted him. I think like if you broke it into two ideas, I would have caught it. Remember, this is a me thing. I just didn't catch that. Because speed reading sometimes will miss a word. And then idea 5 ties too much into our big project. And I'm like, yeah, if I'm going to do the big project, I'm just going to actually work on the big project.
Fair enough.
Which there's no reason I couldn't have just wrote a chapter independently to use in a bigger project and had it in for assignment.
Right.
But I was vibing on like that sweet spot between 1 and 2 and our conversation about memories. But I did like mentally script out the cat whisperer one a bit. Especially like I love the idea that a regular cat, because the flying cats in this one just grew wings, and they're like having a turf war. And this cat's training these military generals how to communicate to cats, and it's like, laser pointers ready.
Yeah, that would be so much fun.
You have to be super deadly serious if it's just there's flying cat. It's like we remember the day the cats could fly. We used to put things up on the top shelf, no more. We used to be able to keep the cats contained. And then there's like the visual of a cat swooping through the air and eating a pigeon.
Yeah, I did ask one of my friends at work what they think would happen if cats could fly, and they're like, oh yeah, there'd be less birds.
Well, not just that. You'd be looking out the window of your airplane, and there'd just be a cat grooming themselves, because cats are already just go everywhere. So you take the most fearless animal on the planet who'll just slap a bear, and you give them 3-dimensional mobility higher than they already have. Cats would just be at the most absurd places. On a completely different note, so I quoted South Park in class yesterday and tried to play it off like it was like an actual thing.
Okay.
So there's a joke in South Park that tragedy becomes comedy in 22.3 years.
Okay.
In class, we were talking about publishing current events and the pros and cons of, like, say if you wrote a COVID novel last year, or you're trying to get out a Donald Trump novel this year, or wrote a novel about Canadian wildfires this year or something, the pros and the cons of it. So I quote that number where it's like 22.3 years, and then you can put out your 9/11 movie and novel, and people won't lose their minds.
Right.
Which literally happened last year. People put out a 9/11 movie.
Right.
And it was no longer considered in terrible taste. And the thing is, the prof's like, yeah, that actually makes sense. You wait about 20 years, and that's when a lot of these things happen. I'm like, oh no, I just added intellectual credibility to South Park. That was never my goal in life.
Well, South Park is one of those fascinating shows where, between all the fart and poop jokes, there actually is some intelligent political commentary.
It's so cursed.
Or social commentary.
But that's my follow-up to you is, how long would you say before you can write about something tragic and, like, just put it for sale? Like, how long would you think you'd wait before you say, like, I don't know. I'm not going to touch the big one right now, so I'm going to go with COVID. How long would you wait for a COVID novel called, like, My Time in the Pandemic or something?
Well, I mean, there's two sides to that coin. You can post it when it's fresh, so that, you know, people get this visceral reaction to what happened and your take on it, which you are likely to receive some criticism if you portray the situation contrary to the narrative. But I would say, yeah, roughly 20 years. That's enough time for people to have been born and becoming young adults where they don't actually have firsthand knowledge of what happened.
And that's kind of my theory. It's like you're at the part where an event that shaped your parents, you're now getting old enough that you can comprehend it.
Exactly. And so, you know, waiting that 20 years is probably, I mean, South Park is oddly specific, saying 22.3, but
I'm sure it was a reference to something. Like, I'm sure it was a very specific, like, yeah, that's when Godzilla came out in North America, and we could be like, oh, Japan.
Maybe.
Like, I'm sure they made that quip deliberately, referring to something awful, and I should not look into it. But also, like, when you put out something, too, especially with, like, how good people are digging into people's back stories now, could you imagine if 20 years ago you put out a book that said My Pal Bill Cosby? So, like, I'm like, no, I would never want my publishing house to be trying to stay on top of current topical things, because I'm like, no. And also, trend chasing is how you end up with 500 Reborn in Another World series.
Yeah. But like, you know, Solo Leveling is the best anime ever.
Our viewer count literally went down when you said that. Just straight up. I think you made a person leave.
That's funny.
They're like, no, I'm not even going to entertain that as a joke, which is fair. Well, what's funny is I make the quip all the time that, like, most things at Show and Jump try and aim for whatever the most successful thing was and try and rip it off.
Right, that's why everything in Show and Jump is Bleach.
Actually, I think everything in Show and Jump just is actually trying to be Jujutsu Kaisen or Attack on Titan right now.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Like, it's like, I made the quip that they have a lot of plot, theme, structural similarity to Bleach. But I thought more about it. I'm like, no, I think it's Attack on Titan they're all trying to be. Like, Jujutsu Kaisen is trying to not necessarily capture the setting of Attack on Titan, but, like, the ugly drawings, the people being bitten in half, the, like, shock value. Like, you look at Chainsaw Man, you look at Kagebuchi, and you look at a few other ones. You're like, yeah, no, they're aiming for Attack on Titan, I think, mixed with Bleach to make it Show and Jump enough.
Right.
Maybe. I could be reading into that too much.
Right, Kagurabachi. Yeah. Okay. I thought you were talking about the monthly series. Which one is it? It's one up. Gokura Gukai.
I will say, though, part of why I've really been vibing on Psychic Cop is I'm like, that feels like a throwback like 70 years back. Like, I feel like I'm reading something from, like, Akira Toriyama's generation with that one.
It definitely feels fresh now that it's been some time. Like, the other kind of lighthearted one that they have going on right now is Roboco. And
But also, to loop back to, like, one of your prompts, is your prompt made me think of Ruri Dragon, actually. Where
Which one?
Your adopted kid just wakes up with family bloodline sorcery. If you don't go from the adopted, it's like, yeah, no, my kid just woke up with dragon powers, and I guess I need to deal with that. Where they're like, yeah, no, we're not. This has no battles. This is kid goes through puberty and he gets dragon powers. I'm like, I can vibe on that. That's amusing.
Yeah, I do really like Ruri Dragon. That's I still think it's funny you missed the adopted part of that prompt, but
I say I read quickly and a lot, not that I read accurately. But yeah, I definitely bit at some of the prompts, so that's why I'm working on my big sci-fi piece. And I really like the idea where I'm like, yeah, each chapter is named after one of the Arcana cards from the tarot deck, so that way it's telling the story of not a character, but the ship going through the tarot journey. And the last tarot card is the world, which will be the chapter when the ship arrives.
That's clever.
Right? I was feeling like, is it a little on the cheesy side? Maybe, but I felt really smug. I'll probably end up calling the ship the Arcana. As the Arcana, because then it's the Arcana voyages across the stars towards the center of the Milky Way in his 20,000 light-year journey.
Oh, there's someone. Oh, that was just.
But yeah, that's. So, what do you think of my idea for like my sci-fi novel? And to loop around a bit, because I did actually have a question I was going with this. Part of my assignment is to read 3 novels for inspiration and like write a paper on those various novels. Do you have any novel or movie or game suggestions after I gave the monologue about what I want my masterwork project to be? So far, my reading list consists of The Foundation by Isaac Asimov and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because it's an excuse to read that again.
Well, I mean, Foundation was pretty high up on my list.
Have you read it?
I don't know. Like, it's a part of a series of books, and I think I might. Like, my dad has a physical library of sci-fi books.
Because Apple TV put up an adaptation for The Foundation that was really good. Like, really good.
I have considered watching it.
You should watch it. It's like, you know how Dune was the best Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
Dune was the best Star Wars Episode 4. The Foundation is the best Star Wars Episode 2.
Hey, okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
I also considered Dune, but I'm like, oh man, Dune is so much. But what I'm really looking for is like someone else doing the whole like standalone complex of you like using the one-shot stories to tell an overarching story. Like Marvel If did that, where you could watch each episode in a vacuum and then they all came together in the last episode.
Well, I don't know that many short stories, unfortunately. Like,
well, I'm writing a full-ass novel, so.
Well, I'm just saying most of the anthologies that I've read, they are not sci-fi.
I mean, it doesn't have to be sci-fi for me to take information to a la carte it and eat its soul.
Well, I mean, more to the point, the last short story anthology that I read was called A Bird in the House. And it was a coming-of-age story about a young girl, and she like lived with her grandma and stuff. So, and then there was like a bunch of short stories as she got older, different perspectives from different people in her life and whatnot. And it was a pretty good anthology. I read it for an English class in university, but I don't really know if it has much you could take from it.
Because yeah, like as a challenge to myself, as weird as this sounds, I'm trying to be more literary with it. So like, I want to write a novel this time around that if it doesn't have a single fight sequence in it, it'll still be good. I may end up adding those in later, but I'm trying to swing the other direction for a bit.
Right.
Like, I'd rather do more Spice and Wolf and less Reborn as a Slime in Another World.
I'll have to get back to you on a reading list. One of the things that I dislike about my own personal memory is that like I read a lot of stuff and I watch a lot of stuff, but I'm really terrible with names and actors, and it's just like, oh, I don't know if I've read that series, and then I read it, it's like, oh yeah, I've definitely read this before.
That's fair. It's ironic though, like I can't think of any manga that have actually done what I'm talking about of, like, let's have a bunch of different vignettes in the same setting. Because, like, they're more likely to do, like, here's my one big series and, like, 8 side stories.
Mm.
And, like...
I mean, I do really enjoy the Kaiju number 8 B-side.
True, but also Kaiju number 8 is just really good. Like, Kaiju number 8 has that unique sweet spot of most of the... It's not trying to be anything. Like, I can't just be like, oh, it's trying to be X, Y, or Z. Because, like, the moment the protagonist is a 33 organ vacuumer, that already is enough to change any show. Like, if you replace any, like, Show and Jump protagonist with Kefka, it changes the show so much it's ridiculous. Like, if you replace Gone with a 33-year-old vacuum cleaner taking the Shonen Hunter exam, it suddenly gets so much better. Like, Hunter x Hunter following Lero the entire time would just be a better show.
I mean, I think that part of that is your perspective now that you relate more to characters in our age group.
Firmly disagree.
Oh?
So, some of my favorite things of all time have always had the older protagonists, but it's like it fell out of fashion almost. Like, Ghost in the Shell, Berserk, Escaflowne to a certain extent. Like, even Inuyasha, the character Inuyasha is an adult.
Fair.
Kind of. He's in a quantum state. Every Gundam ever, even though, like, the main character's, like, 20, well, like, 18, they don't feel like the Show and Jump children. They feel older. And, like, if I was watching, say, Gundam Wing, and they're like, yeah, these are all 20-year-old, or, like, 18-year-olds, I'm like, dude just shot a man in the face and rolled down a hill. He could be 20 or 30, it'd be fine. Like, if you aged up every character in every Gundam series by a decade, it wouldn't change a single line of text. That's my mini rant. Is that, yeah, no, a lot of, like, Hellsing was fantastic.
Fair enough.
Witch Hunter Robin, adults with real jobs. I'm just saying, some of the top tier stuff always had actual adults in it.
What do you think about Kill Blue?
Huh?
What do you think about Kill Blue, the Shonen Jump series? About the aged down hitman who occasionally ages back up when the plot requires it.
So first off, it's Detective Conan, but an assassin. I just want to get that off the record. It took me a long time to realize that.
Okay.
Like, an embarrassingly long time. So, it's funny, because I like it, if it wasn't an anime. If this premise was an American cartoon, it'd be great. But anime likes to sexualize everything. And he's like, I'm going to be a parental figure and an adult in this teenage body, drawn anime style. I'm like, you are one step at all times from being deleted forever. You are so close to being canceled. But, like, if it was drawn in, say, the style of, I don't know,
The Last Airbender?
Yeah. Then suddenly, like, it would take the creep factor out almost completely. Sorry, anime. I give you a lot of shout-outs and a lot of recommendations, but you're not the right genre for aged down and spending time with teenagers. Because the protagonist is great. It's kind of like if Sakamoto Days actually followed Sakamoto's Days, it would have been amazing. But they felt the need to fat shame him and write him out of his show.
He did basically get written out of his own show.
But yeah, as a general rule, I prefer anime with older characters.
Yeah, okay.
And I think me getting older really didn't change that. You're right, it probably, like... I would say it changed my opinion, but also... So they recently did a re-release of Bartender and Spice and Wolf.
Okay.
Those came out about 10 years ago each. Bartender, about a bartender. Great manga. 10 out of 10. Spice and Wolf, about a spice merchant and his wolf goddess girlfriend trying to stop a silver trade scam. They were still my favorite a decade ago. That's why I'm stoked they got remade. So that's me standing up for like, no, my tastes haven't changed. I've just been given a lot of garbage over the years.
I mean, that's true. We have made a comment in the past about how there's been so much garbage that our standards have to recalibrate, basically.
But also, like, there has been good things, too. You just have to, like, look for them. And with that, onto our random question list. Sing the random question song as I look for the list.
It's a random question time. Time for a random question.
That was beautiful. You didn't hear the background music, but piano started playing as you did that. Okay. Do. If you were on the contest for Miss Canada contest pageant, what would your talent be for the talent proportion?
Well, okay, does it have to be a real talent, or can I just be like, I want to choose this talent?
I'm going to let you choose it. I mean, we already have Karl about to win Miss Canada, so...
Well, I mean, I really would like to be able to juggle chainsaws. I think that'd be fun.
Amazing.
What would your talent be there, Richard?
So my instinct is like, nothing would make a beauty pageant more interesting than if I just boxed a bear on stage. So I'm going to go with takes down a bear with my bare knuckles on stage. Just fights a bear.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the you can't get a single blemish on your dress while doing it, otherwise you're just
no. Like the thing is, I want it to be like I'm covered in blood, like a seed out of Baki, but they just watched me fight a bear on live TV. Who committed tax fraud. This was a bad bear. He deserves this clearly.
Tax evading bear.
It's like this bear was Trump's defense attorney. I see. Because in retrospective, I just beat a bear to death. They'd be like, that was cruel to the bear. No, this bear is a jerk. I need this on the record. This bear personally is an asshole.
He did something.
He did something to deserve it. And our second question, I think we've had this one actually. Have we had the who would you add to Mount Rushmore? Yeah, because we would have had The Rock.
Right.
Here we go. Here's a different new one. What was your favorite television network?
What was my favorite television network?
Or could still be is. You're in Saskatchewan, it's possible. But if you say Disney Plus, I need to be clear that they do not sponsor our content.
No, when I was younger, I really liked the Family Channel because they didn't have any like commercials for anything besides the Family Channel. I think it became the Disney Channel though, so maybe I don't know if it got bought out or if it was always a Disney Channel but.
Where I was such a big fan of the Sci-Fi Network, episodes of Stargate and Relic Hunter, and like I kind of miss just throwing on TV and be like, here's something new I would never be exposed to normally. And B plus Sci-Fi is like one of my favorite things to just casually absorb.
B plus Sci-Fi.
Yeah, A plus Sci-Fi less so.
Oh?
Like if your Sci-Fi is polished to the point of a Marvel movie, I want people riding sandworms and drinking blue juice and then turning into sandworm human hybrids to rule over. I want wackadoodle ideas. I don't want like global warming is killing us, but in a near future we have solar roadways. I'm like, no. Bring on the people riding pterodactyls that have 4 wings that somehow fly.
Okay.
Bring on the sentient crystal monsters that when you touch it, specifically turn into your child to have you relive your trauma. Bring on Merlin from Arthurian mythology being an alien scientist from a portal, from another world, and the Holy Grail being a laser weapon. I want wackadoodle sci-fi done competently.
Yeah, okay. So, like, what did you enjoy The Expanse?
Yes, but it got close to being dry.
The
Expanse is a weird one where, like, I would have enjoyed The Expanse more without aliens.
Yeah, okay.
Because, like, oh man, they had, like, a lot going for it. But it got close to Game of Thronesing it for me. If The Expanse didn't have Amos in there to add some levity, would have been game over.
Okay.
Yeah, like, if the characters weren't the scrappy underdogs that have a bit of humor to them, it needed that. Also, the main villain looks suspiciously like Justin Trudeau. Like, I'm trying to remember his name. He was like the terrorist leader, and they stole all the spaceships and missiles. And he just looked suspiciously like evil Justin Trudeau, and I don't know why. But I couldn't unsee it. It was really funny.
That is pretty funny.
But also, I'm not as much of a psychopath to be like, yeah, The Expanse was mid. No, The Expanse was good. It was A+ sci-fi. I just personally sometimes I'm more inspired by B+ sci-fi. Because my brain likes taking a subpar idea and then working with it till it's good. So, like, the reason things like Bleach, Naruto Shippuden, Siren rattle around in my brain is I'm like, missed potential. Like, I can think about Bleach, I'm like, I can't believe he didn't give every captain a Bankai. Are you kidding me? Or, like, how would this put yourself into someone's backstory sword even work? Or what do you mean is stand makes zippers that can punch through pocket dimensions to other zippers? Like, those ideas aren't fleshed out enough to actually function, and they capture my imagination because of it. Or if you do something like Uzumaki, which is just good, I don't really have a ton to be like, huh. Because it was just good and complete and is done and was great.
Uzumaki was great.
And, like, Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammers, like, yeah, was good. Should read. 10 out of 10.
But it doesn't actually capture your imagination.
It's hard to dissect something that's really good. Full Metal Alchemist is a rare exception, because they did such good world building.
Right.
But you'll notice it's easier for us to do an episode on, I don't know, Robococo than Full Metal Alchemist, which is ironic, because Full Metal Alchemist is just really good. That's why we don't review AAA game titles on here. We're not going to be like, let's talk for an hour about everything Breath of the Wild did right. That's not my aesthetic. Let's talk about everything that Ocarina of Time did better than Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I'm a rebel, maybe. I actually don't know what side of that debate would make you the rebel. But
what side indeed?
And with that, let's wrap up this week's episode. So, takeaways. Your prompts were entertaining. Fluffy cheesecakes are delicious. And 22.3 years until something bad happening to me becomes funny. I am so close to being able to joke about my dad's death.
I mean, haven't you already done that, though?
Yeah, but it could still be in poor taste.
I suppose. I guess it would definitely be in poor taste for someone else to joke about your dad's death.
Exactly. Like, if you were to be like, you know what's funny? That your dad died. I'd be like, Carl, really? You're right, but like, wow.
Sometimes I forget.
I mean, actually, to be fair, I personally would drop on the floor laughing if you're like, start listing characters like, yeah, I've noticed all my favorite characters have dead dads, like Naruto and Luffy and Richard, and yeah, I'm like, wait, what?
That would be pretty funny.
Good stuff. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We've added a button where you can submit your random questions through most apps and things. It's pretty awesome. And yeah, I don't know. I have a book, and when you buy it, it makes me happy. When you listen to our podcast, which is available where podcasts are had and also on YouTube, makes me happy. And we do look at some of these stats to see where people are from. Because what makes me really happy is being like, someone downloaded it where? Like, we got some weird listenership when I hear like, oh yeah, someone in Athens is listening. I'm like, that amuses me to no end.
That is extremely amusing.
So instead of praying to Hades, pray to us. Bye.
Bye.
Maybe don't tell people to pray to Hades. I don't know where I was going with that. Like, Hades is topical? I don't know.